Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here. And thank you, Melissa, for such a warm introduction. Karen, it is so lovely to be in dialogue with you today about America Utopica.
Hi, Alison. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to be joining from Paris. And I want to thank you for your time and for being such a good friend, I would say, and for listening to my questions that I have all the time and for your time. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I'm completely loving being a part of this conversation and the opportunities that we had to work together when I was living in Houston. I'm in New York now and starting a new role on Monday at Public Art Fund. And I think that's
I wanted to say congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
I'm excited for you too.
Thank you. And I think that's a really great place for us to start, really thinking about the time that we spent together in Houston and the public art project we did there. So can you tell us a bit about America Utopica Houston and how you can experience it?
Yes. So right now, the project is being on display in Houston. It's called America Utopica Houston. It's the Houston version. And it's open. The opening is today. It's a virtual opening. You can access online. You can go to my website and you can see the pictures of the show. And if you are in Houston, you can visit by appointment. So you can schedule appointment, send an email. All the information is on the website. And yes, come and visit. And also, we have that wonderful public art project where I'm displaying some artworks from this project around the city in some Ike smart kiosks that were launching like a month or 2 months ago, and now they are going to put up to 60, 50 something around the city. So you can also find the artwork being displayed there and people can participate. So there's a QR code, people can participate and check, yes, the exhibition, kind of the exhibition, some works around the city, yes.
That's so exciting. And so tell us about America Utopica. Where did this come from? Where did this idea start? And how do people participate?
So I'm going to start by the name of this body of work. America Utopica for me is in Spanish. It has no translation, and it's not the same that Utopian American, which would be the translation. And why not? This is because America in Spanish means the whole continent. So when I came to the United States, I kind of like lose the right to call myself like I live in the Americas, you know, because you call yourself, we are Americans. This is America. And that kind of like leave you out. And this, I think this could tell you every Spanish speaker that it's kind of like a weird, it's something cultural, it's something like in the translation between words and what's the meaning in one part of the word and what does it mean in another part of the word. But yeah, I'm pretty sure if you ask any Spanish speaker, they will tell you the same. But that's how I felt, and that's what I wanted to be in Spanish, because I'm also including. So I'm speaking about my experience and my identity in the United States and also the United States demographic, but I'm also speaking about my identity, which includes Latin America, so, and my own indigenous identity. So I thought it was important for me to we use the right words to describe the work and to include everyone and include myself also, right? Because that's just part of my identity. And so how you participate, there is a very easy way to participate. You can go online, fill up a form, submit your photo, and that's it. And after, I'm gonna use each photo and create work depending on each city. But yeah, for now I'm working on the US, on the demographic of US. I may extend in the future, but this is what I'm working now. So please participate.
Thank you. And it's really interesting too, for myself growing up in the United States, when I kind of understood the challenges around calling the United States America when we are part of the Americas, and how that, you know, that gesture really centralizes a particular experience as the only experience, and as the most important experience. And it's a very kind of colonial gesture. And so I want to talk a little bit, and we're going to go a little off script actually, because you're kind of bringing us to a really great question around identity and your experience of coming to the United States, and really the conversations you and I have had around the census and your experience of it and identification, and then finding out that you have Indigenous heritage. And so I'm wondering if you could just walk us through your relationship to the Americas, and then your relationship to the United States through the census report and your identity.
Yes, thank you for that question. That's actually a really good question. So I found out as an adult that I am of Indigenous descendant. Also, my father, I knew my father, of course. I have few contact with him, but never have a relationship. So when I was an adult, he came back, and he also was kind of searching about his own identity, and he was trying to figure out also because he didn't knew his mother, and so he found out that piece of information, and he shared it with me. And at that moment when he shared it with me, it kind of it gave me a sense of belonging, because before I felt that I didn't belong like I didn't belong here, I didn't belong there, like I couldn't claim anything, and I didn't have like a sense of like roots or anything at all. So, and if I asked my mother, she wouldn't know anything more than her grandparents. And so I think it's important to have this sense of being part of something, right? Of being part of something that is cultural. And so I wanted to explore that, and I've been wanting to explore that for many years, but I didn't have the. So first of all, I felt that I needed to do it with respect, because I don't have the experiences. I haven't gone through other experiences, like people who, like Indigenous people who live in a reserve, let's say, or someone who experienced racism very directly because of where they are living, the economical status, and all that. So I wanted to explore that and find my place to be able to create those moments of belonging for myself, but moving in a way that I felt good about doing it, and not jumping in other people's experience, because I think that would be for me doing the same that I always hate. Like, not, I don't know if it's hate the word, it's such a strong word, but I feel like that's kind of like a colonizers kind of way of doing things, of me as someone who has a little bit more privilege go and taking photograph of someone who, you know, and showing my vision. And what I really want is show my vision, but my vision with my own experience, not someone else, because I haven't lived and I haven't gone through that. And I think I got lost through your question. You
Well,
asked
I'll
something
recast
else.
it. Yes. I mean, everything that you were talking about was really wonderful and was part of the question. The second part was, When you came to the United States, you've talked to me about the first time you filled out the census report. And that was kind of what started, as I understand it, it started you wanting to gather data.
Yes, it was actually when I first came to the US, when I have to fill up the migration forms.
Okay.
You have to fill up the race, and that's such an odd question, was such an odd question for me, because no one have ever asked me what race I am before in Argentina or where I was living, which was.
Can I ask? I'm sorry to interrupt. So for people who don't have that experience, what you're just Argentinian, right? Like that's.
Yeah, that was it. I was just Argentinian, and I never thought about it. And another thing that kind of shook me was that I didn't have like a place to, like, you have like it's like fill up like this, the, how do you say, check the box, right? Check the box with your race. And I am not white, and I am none of the other races that appear in the census or in these forms. And there you have ethnicity, and you can check Latino or Hispanic. And so I was checking, I thought that I needed to fill up the race. So I was choosing something that was the most similar, which was white, Latino and white, which I'm not white, and I don't consider myself white. And again, thinking now, right, that those questions, I'm thinking of whitewashing, you know, how did you assimilate? How do you try to identify?
Yes.
And so when I had such a beautiful culture that I didn't have access to, and that makes me sad, because there is a big part of history that has been erased, and cultural things that I don't have access to because this whitewashing that have been happening. And so I didn't want that to happen anymore. And I wanted to create something that will keep me in a way that space, you know, and maybe also, who knows, inspired, because Latin America and Argentina, are racist countries. They don't recognize it, but they really are. So these conversations never happen. And so maybe if I would have known before that I have indigenous root before living in the US, maybe I would have been ashamed of that, or maybe, you know, ashamed because there's a culture that tells you that that's less, you know, that's not that beauty, or that doesn't get close to the European canon. And so all these questions like goes through yourself and all the time in your mind, and that affect in every aspect in your life. And in Argentina, for example, that has a lot to do also race, which they don't call it race, but discrimination happens a lot, but it also interlaces a lot with class. So I think it's it's way more complicated than I think it's more complicated than in the US, because there's a lot of information that is not accessible, you know, and it's not being discussed neither. So again, I got lost in your question, but
Oh, I think this is perfect. I mean, it's been really wonderful to hear you walk through it. On my end, it sounds very clear, and it's really helpful for me to understand exactly what brought you to this project. And it's, in a sense, there's like a little bit of, I'm feeling like there's a little bit of activism in the work. But it comes from a very personal place. It comes from a place of visibility, right? You're looking for visibility. You're looking for a sense of self in a place that is not your home, that is now your home, but it's not a place that you were raised, right? And this place wasn't allowing you to find yourself. And
Yeah.
so from there, it feels like you are creating a place for other people to find themselves, maybe with a similar experience. And, you know, as we've gone through and you've told me about some of the early responses, I was really kind of impressed by the public reception of the work, how many other people feel the same way, you know, want to be able to participate and feel recognized. How many, I know this is based in Houston right now, and I know you have ambition for it to be in other cities in the United States and perhaps other cities in the Americas. I don't know yet. You'll have to let us know. But my question is, how many different countries, or can you name a few of the countries around the world where you've had participation?
Yes, the response of the people has been really, really great, and I am amazed with the response. But I have people from Korea, from Mexico, from India, from Kenya, from of course Argentina, France, a lot of places around the world that I wasn't thinking that it would reach out that far, but I it was thanks to people who supported, like individual institutions, you know, who reshared the open call, and that made it possible. But yes, I'm very excited. And also now in the open call, in the online form, there is a space for people who want to leave a comment, uh, and I just let it open. It's not like mandatory. You cannot fill up anything, but a lot of people are writing, and I'm writing their experiences, which kind of make me feel that I'm not so alone, you know. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to put yourself out there, because you have to put yourself in a very vulnerable position, because you are putting a part of yourself there to be questioned, and or to be open to answer questions, right? And so you have to be prepared as well. You have to be ready, and have your ideas more or less ready. You don't always have to be like know exactly 100% what, I don't know 100% all the time what exactly what is what I want. Or maybe I know, I write it, and after like months ago I go again, oh, it was here, I knew it from the beginning, I don't know why I got so lost.
It's the way, you know, you're a critical thinker, and so you have an idea and you're not sure. And, you know, for me, I also see your studio as a real space of experimentation. Like you're trying new things, you're trying new formats. And sometimes you have to try all of the options before you're certain that it's the right one. So,
Yes, it's true. And since you're saying that, you're mentioning that, it's also true, because I use my studio as a place to experiment, and in that process, which is very zen and very meditative, I kind of try to make sense of my own identity, you know, trying to put the pieces together. And this brings me a little back to my previous body of work, which was the constructed self, which I'm photographing first, second, and third generation American immigrants. And so I'm speaking about identity and how uh, this intersect, like the many identities we have intersects together. And so in doing that, in doing like, sorry, portraits of other people, I may need to take a little water.
yes, of course. Well, I'm going to take a moment and describe the constructed self. So it's this, what's really interesting is there are these photographs that have these squares, and the squares look like pixels. So the squares maybe about this big, you know, they're not very big, but they're not small. And they are kind of arranged across the composition to fragment the image. So instead of seeing the photograph perfectly, you have like a glitch and it looks like a pixel. And so there's these really, there are formal decisions that you've made in your work to point to the conceptual. And I think that's what you were talking about just a minute ago, the kind of the concepts.
Yes, and now that you mention pixels, you have been mentioning pixels, and I've been working in the squares for a year, more than a year now. And the when I sent to print the mural, the photographic installation for this show, the name they put to the file was Pixel Banner. And that brought me back to what you were saying. And I was thinking, well, there is a relationship between the squares and the pixels, right? Because people are submitting their images of skin tones. I'm taking that image on my computer. I'm opening on Photoshop. From that, zooming in up to one single pixel, grabbing the color and copying the color to do the square with this skin color sample. So I think there is a relationship in between the photos, and that they are actually squares, and they resemble pixels.
Yeah, and there's like, for me, that's what I see. And that's the beauty sometimes of, being a curator, or thinking about an artist's practice and not being the artist. Like, sometimes you pick up on the things that seem so apparent. Like, for me, I thought it was very intentional that you use the square to reference a pixel, but for you, it sounds like it's just intuitive. And so maybe you didn't think about it until you were confronted with it. And then you realized, of course you were doing this, but it was an intuitive decision.
Yes, it happens all the time. And before I remember, I was so, oh, why I didn't realize this. But I think that's the beauty, right? Of having many people like looking at your work and pointing at things, and making realize things that you didn't notice. Because as I said before, you know, you don't know all the answers, but sometimes you have to just do the work, make it and take it out of your system, just to see if it's bad, if it's good. You need to do it, and after the work may change and make progress and get better. So yes, absolutely.
So have you run into any challenges with this project? And if so, how do you deal with the challenges?
Yes. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges was to try to speak about my own experience without jumping in any territory that I thought that it wasn't mine or wasn't my story, right? How do I deal with that? That was before starting the work. How do I deal with that, and how do I come across with a decision of doing the work. And also, I think other challenges have been doing a work. I don't know if I call it a challenge, but doing work that is similar to like contemporary artists that I admire, but I needed to take it out of the system. And one thing that happened to me while I was looking, of course, I love the work of Glenn Ligon and his piece America. People have pointed that is like a remember to them, and of course because I admire his work, but I studied his work and why he was using the word America and what typography he was using. And so I decided to use the typography that is in the dollar bill. It's like a similar, it's inspired by that typography. Just working with this idea also that we're talking about US, and that's a very capitalist world. Um, and and also when I was like doing my research, and I had this idea of working with skin tones. I talk to my husband. I always tell him my ideas, even if he sometimes don't understand them, but I need to talk to someone. And I was telling him, and I found Byron Kim, who's working, of course, with skin tones. And I said, well, someone there is always gonna be like someone who did it first, right? Of course, it's very different. And his concept is very different. And so I said, well, I'm just gonna do it anyway. I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Um, because you cannot shut down ideas, because ideas are like little seeds, right? You put them in the ground, and after they start growing and growing and growing. And so I needed to put that seed and see where this project and this idea will take me. Um, but but yes, I think those were some of the two challenges before I started the project. But yes, it's been interesting. I have had many challenges, but those were like the first two right out of the bat when I was starting this body of work.
Right. You felt a little kind of maybe intimidated by the comparisons, and that's understandable.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. And as a curator, there's oftentimes there'll be other colleagues that are working on the same projects or similar research ideas. I think it just happens because, we're in the world and we're all thinking about critical issues.
yes, it is.
And so we're going to have some overlap because we are in this world together. We are experiencing this world at the same time.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
it's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of kind of collectivity is a great segue into Somos Millones. Can you tell us a little bit about where that comes from?
Yes, Somos Millones, which translate to "We Are Millions,"
Can
was.
you pronounce that again? Because clearly I did it wrong. Somos Millones?
Well, that's my Argentinian accent, but you say it right. You say it
Okay.
like the neutral Spanish.
Yes.
But we Argentinians pronounce things a little bit different, so you are good. Yes. Um, so that was inspired by an article I read about the population of Mapuche indigenous people in Argentina and Chile. So I come from the Mapuche indigenous group, and there is like a 12% of the population in Chile, and there are like 2,100 in Argentina. And so that like had me thinking that there is like even though it's considered a minority, there are millions of people. So there are millions of lives that are being affected. And um, and people in Argentina or in Chile don't consider, like, they don't care because it doesn't affect them. That's the right way to say it. I know it sounds a little bit harsh, but it's the truth. And so when something is going well for you, when something is going well for people, people don't care more than what that affects them. So I thought that in just thinking and writing this, like, we are million, it's also like claiming, we are here, we are millions. And we are much more than that. And also the use that the piece was made with wood, resin, no, not resin, um, wood, paint, and a stone that is called obsidian stone. And so not that long ago, I went to Mexico and I went to the anthropology museum, and I saw the beautiful artifacts that they were making, and they were using stones. They were using jade mostly and the obsidian stone. So I started researching about the usage of what semi-precious stones were used in Latin America for the different indigenous group. But also came across with this meaning of the obsidian stone, which is a mirror that reflects. And so in putting that, I'm kind of creating a metaphor that includes myself. So I'm putting the stone which reflects me, and I'm including myself in claiming me as part of them. And I think the work also, the work of course has this, I don't know if you, we're seeing it in this video, in this look at the video, it's black and white, right? It has like this black and has like a light that is white. I'm also working this kind of, you know, how do you say it, like this kind of
Binaries.
yes,
Binary. Yeah.
okay, these binaries. But I'm putting also the work in front of the other piece, which is called Hechos del mismo barro. We are made of the same clay, with the demographics of Houston. And so I think when I put it also there, it's taking a different meaning. So we are millions, like we are the people, like the diversity of the city, the diversity is like we are a lot, you know, we are many of many, you know. So I think it's changing also like the meaning as well, like it's having like different meanings at the same time.
So then the millions are, it can be, has slippage, right? Like, so it can be interpreted as like the millions of indigenous people from Argentina and Chile, which is in your heritage, right? It's in your background. It could be the millions of people who have a similar experience, kind of thinking about the immigration form or the census. And for me, I receive that as a kind of an understanding of global citizenship, right? We don't live in isolation, and we are all a product of colonialism and imperialism. And the Americas has had so much colonialism and imperialism, so many experiences, so many different countries claiming lands, right? And so I guess now I'm getting lost in my own question, but I think it's really poetic. I'm just thinking about the experience of Somos Millones on top of we are clay.
We're made of the same clay.
We're made of the same clay.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be interpreted so many ways. There's definitely some like that slippage, you know, it's like double entendre.
Yes. And I think I like that idea because, you know, it's like again like a conversation back and forth with my identity, my own indigenous identity, and trying to kind of reclaim, I would say, and also who I am now, where I am part, what society culture I am part of right now, and how these two come across together. They intersect at some point, you know, and I think my experiences also, other people have the same experiences. So yeah, they are all the time like coming back and forth, and like this kind of conversation with what's happening with my own self, right, my own identity, and also other people as well. Like I always see my work as self-reflective, even if I'm doing like a collaboration, like people are collaborating and sending their pictures, or even if I'm taking a portrait of other person, I'm see myself reflect. I'm always like I can avoid that. Like I see myself, I see my own experience reflected.
Of course, I mean, it's your work. You know?
Yes.
And I think that's also something beautiful about, I mean, my experience in this world is like, depending on where I go, I feel like I have a different experience, of course, right? Like my body is read in a different way. How I speak, how I behave, how I look. I think it's a very common thing for people to have a kind of dislocated experience traveling the world, you know, or even just traveling different parts of the country. And so because this work is so tied to that, I'm curious, how does the work shift depending on where it's located? And do you have plans for it to be in other places?
Yes. So the idea of this body of work is to be a national art project, And so right now there are only 3 pieces in the body of work. Of course, the body, this is kind of like a sneak peek for what is coming in 2023. And that's why it's also mostly digital. But the idea is, of course, that the work grows, and I'm going to be extending. I mean, I'm going to be exploring more of my identity and more of the demographics using the skin tones. And there's one of the pieces, Hechos del mismo barro, that changes according the city, the demographics of each city where the show is gonna, where the work is gonna be shown. So now I'm showing in Houston, and so this piece has the demographics of Houston and the people, the participants of Houston. So each of those squares represent a person who lives in Houston, and is an order of how they were arranged, in order of how they were received to avoid any hierarchy. And there is also a list that has the first name of the person and the ethnicity of the participant. So people can look themselves in the list and see that they are part of the work. But yes, the idea is to, of course, change cities, go to different cities and do demographics of a different city, open a call in that city and change. And that's going to be changing every time we show this work in a different place. So we're working on that with Melissa, and hopefully we are going to be showing this work soon in a different city, and the work is going to grow and expand, and I'm really excited.
This sounds phenomenal. Well, Karen, thank you so much for walking us through the project today. And before we go, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else you wanted to share or talk about before Melissa opens it up to questions from the audience.
Well, I think I'm gonna say people participate. And this is gonna be like an open call, like open call all the time. I don't know how to say that, but it's gonna be open all the time. So I need the most participant I can. So share with your friends, share with your loved ones, share with anyone you know. And yes, the more the merrier. Is that how you say it, right? The more the merrier. Yes. I always say it wrong. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. Yes.
Okay, well,
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.